This is a KPIX5 News Special.
It's like the Wild West.
Marijuana cultivation has doubled in the Golden State in just the last 5 years.
There's a lot of money to be made.
Just like gold in 1848, it's attracting speculators from around the world.
It's out of control.
Everyone's eager to cash in on California's green rush.
Hello and welcome. I'm Veronica Dela Cruz. Ahead in our show, an in-depth look at what's happened since California became the first state to legalize marijuana for medical use 17 years ago. From the ideals of a prescription medication to the leafy contraband bought and sold on the streets, a lot of cannabis for legal and illegal purposes is grown in Mendocino, Humboldt, and Trinity counties, known as the Emerald Triangle and famed for producing some of the finest pot in the world. And Joe Vasquez found our medical marijuana law is so vague, it's opened the floodgates for profiteers, the new prospectors.
When the sound of Chopper 5 sends these guys scrambling, you know they have something to hide. They're rushing to cover up greenhouses full of marijuana.
That's because under state law, you're only allowed to grow 6 plants per patient, not hundreds. So who are these pot growers? Where do they come from?
The Asian connections, the Eastern European connections, Russia, Bulgaria, Germans. I mean, we've pretty much ran into it all.
Why Bulgarians? That's so obscure.
I have no idea, but there's a lot of money to be made in marijuana. It's a modern day green rush, is what they call it.
Green rush instead of gold rush.
Yeah.
Take this grow operation near the town of Bridgeville. Sheriff deputies busted it last year, destroying some 400 pounds of harvested marijuana and almost 2,000 plants. But here it is, back up in operation.
There is no inaction on my part.
Humboldt County's District Attorney Paul Gallego says don't blame him. It's California's much too vague medical marijuana law.
There are no clear guidelines.
Under California's Compassionate Use Act, you can grow cannabis for medical use with a doctor's note called a recommendation. You can even form a co-op and grow communally. But every county has different regulations on how many plants are allowed per patient, and Humboldt has no limits at all. So Gallego says people game the system.
We can arrive at these sites, there are these 100 plants, and we're like, wow, completely illegal activity, look at this impact on our community. And then 100 plus recommendations will surface, and everyone's like, no, my part of this massive grow is completely lawful. Whether they're lawful or not, since the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt on us, and we have to prove it unanimously to 12 jurors, it is often a burden of proof that we're not able to prevail at trial.
So just because they think they can't win, they don't try, and then the status quo continues.
Right, and that emboldens these growers. And as a matter of fact, some of these road growers, they're illegally diverting water from some of our most pristine rivers. Now combine that with the drought, and it has been a disaster this summer. Not just on private land either. We found huge pot grows sucking up water and polluting the environment on some of our public lands as well. And so the government is now sending in the enforcers.
At a staging area deep in Humboldt County's Six Rivers National Forest,
It's going to be hot today.
a team of law enforcement agents gets ready for a raid of an illegal marijuana grow. 2 by 2, they chop her in, Tarzan style, as we follow by ground.
I'm assigned to a team that's going to hike 2 miles into the woods here, into the grow location.
Guarded by armed sheriff's deputies, we are traveling with 2 biologists. Morad Gabriel and Mark Higley are studying a little-known dark side of the underground pot business, its harmful impact on the environment.
I don't know if it's human or animal.
It's public land, but there are no paths here. It's steep and rugged terrain. And dangerous. The cops tell us to get down on the ground. The men who tend the so-called trespass grows also carry guns and could be hiding nearby. Luckily this time, false alarm. An abandoned camper, remnant of last year's growing season. Farther down the mountain, though, signs of recent activity.
Oh, so you want to see their filter system?
A makeshift pond made out of a tarp, delivering water to a grow.
This would be basically dewatering this spring because most of the water is being captured here in this pool, and then that water is being used somewhere else. And this is happening hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times out on our national forest.
And often it's not just a trickle. This rigged system on the side of a steep forest slope was sucking out almost 2 gallons per minute from a stream above. That's nearly 2,500 gallons per day. And it's not just the water grab, it's the chemicals. At this grow site, we found boxes and boxes of Decon.
It's manufactured so that one dose can kill.
Deadly rodenticides like this are banned in California because of their collateral damage.
Here is 9 pounds of rodenticide in a bait block. It's peanut butter flavored. Peanut butter is liked by game species, so bear, deer. So now you run the risk of individuals consuming game species that have their tissue tainted with rodenticide.
The two scientists have cataloged rodenticides at more than a dozen trespass grows. Their research confirms the deadly poisons are killing wildlife, such as the Pacific fisher, a small furry creature native to these woods. Spotted and barred owls are also dying.
I think this is an atrocity on our public lands.
So, armed with clippers, the SWAT team goes to work, cutting the plants down one by one. Then it's on to the next grow, outnumbered, outarmed, but undeterred.
So how much of this is illegal?
Well, technically, all of it, because remember, marijuana is illegal under federal law. So there's a thriving black market. And a matter of fact, I've heard that while the street price here in California for a pound of marijuana is about $1,000, back east it can go for as much as $5,000.
Right, and it is all about the money.
Always.
Always. All right, Joe, thank you. How a young man went to work on a pot farm and ended up in a shallow grave. That's still ahead. And mysterious activity over the skies of Mendocino. Unidentified armed men dropping out of helicopters to chop down marijuana grows. It's not like the old hippie days anymore in Northern California's Emerald Triangle. Mega marijuana grows mean mega money. Here's Joe again with this chapter of our story, an alarming increase in violence in a place that's become notorious.
The locals call it Murder Mountain, and recently it's been living up to its name. Miles off the main highway in southern Humboldt's marijuana country, the area is nicknamed after a serial killing long ago. People are still dying here and disappearing without a trace. Take the case of Garrett Rodriguez, a young surfer from San Diego.
He was just the best. Funny, smart, loving, kind.
His aunt, Bonnie Taylor, says even though his family begged him not to, Garrett took off 2 years ago to work on a marijuana farm here.
He was told he could make a lot of money.
At first, he checked in regularly with the family. Then, suddenly, last spring, silence.
So I was worried what was going on up there. I'm trying to call him in the meantime as well, and I couldn't get a hold of him.
These cases are becoming more and more frequent up in our area.
Chris Cook is a private eye hired by the family. She quickly learned neighbors suspected he was dead, and they told her they thought they knew who did it. She reported her findings to the local sheriff.
They did not appear to be interested.
Frustrating not just Garrett's family, but the community who knew they had a killer in their midst. After months with no arrests, folks in the nearby town of Alder Point decided to take the law into their own hands.
According to the sheriff's department, 8 men, known as the Alder Point 8 after the name of their town, formed a posse, confronted the man they believed to be the suspect, shot him twice, once in the arm and once in the leg, and then forced him to take them to the body.
An anonymous call alerted the sheriff, who confirmed it was Garrett, buried in a shallow grave. He'd been shot to death. For local residents, the Alder Point 8 have become heroes.
We know all of them, and they're all really good people.
But almost a year later, still no arrest in the case. Lieutenant Steve Knight with the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department says it's not that simple.
The local growers do not want law enforcement coming in to areas where the marijuana is at. They're afraid that we'll see the marijuana and we'll take it from them, and that is their living.
He says since the vigilantes also committed crimes, they're not likely to come forward as witnesses. In fact, this summer, 2 more people were gunned down on Murder Mountain. A family member tells us at least one of the men was a member of the Alder Point 8.
I just feel helpless. I grew up here and I'm trying to raise my son here.
It's out of control. It's out of control. And the fact that this kid, his life was taken and no one really seems to care, something's wrong with the system.
It's been almost a year and there has still been no arrest in the Rodriguez case. Marijuana also brought turmoil just south to Mendocino County. Kate Kagarin joins us now with that part of the story.
Going by local laws, no guarantee a grower will be safe from the long arm of the law. This summer, many of them found their businesses wiped out in mysterious raids. They dress in combat camouflage. Some of them hide their faces. This summer, a group of men in Mendocino County loaded into helicopters and flew missions to eradicate marijuana. They're not cops. They work for a security company called Lear Asset Management.
Last year, we arrested 2 individuals.
According to their promotional poster, the group works with law enforcement. That's why Susan Schindler suspected the posse when her garden got hit.
They took a hacksaw and they just sliced right through the stem.
Susan says the armed men in camouflage who dropped into her garden from an unmarked helicopter refused to identify themselves.
There was no paperwork. There were no copies of any warrants. There were no inventories left of what they took. It's all gone. It's all gone.
She says she's following all the county regulations, 25 plants per parcel, the legal limit in Mendocino County. And she says the strain of cannabis she grows has no street value. It really is medicinal.
So the irony is this whole garden that was destroyed was not a garden that would get you high.
Lear Asset Management's president, Paul Truett, turned down our request for an interview, but says Lear had nothing to do with the raid on Susan's garden. Sheriff Tom Allman confirmed that.
The sheriff's office does not hire any private security guards to go out and do our job.
He admits his deputies were in the area, but says his department doesn't keep records of their activities, leaving growers to wonder if they've been vandalized or raided.
In a county where we have a sheriff that supports marijuana within certain boundaries, what right would they have to do that? Why would they want to do that?
Local law enforcement agencies say they don't need warrants to conduct these raids, and if growers want their property back, they'll have to sue. And they don't want to do that because they are breaking federal law. Thanks, Kate. It's supposed to help you heal, but what's really in that pot candy? Our own Mike Sugarman spent the big bucks so you wouldn't have to. What he found coming up. And Phil Matier talks regulation and legalization with 2 of the state's big political players. Medical marijuana may be legal in California, but there's no guarantee patients are getting what they pay for when they shop at their local dispensary. That sent Mike Sugarman and his own purchase to the lab to find out what's in my pot.
Recently I was sick, really sick, life-threatening sick. Bacteria in my aorta.
And I had a lot of pills prescribed during that horrible period. These are just some of the medicines, including pot, medical marijuana, and it really did help relieve some of that awful, awful pain. Mostly I ate it. It worked. Sometimes.
But sometimes I'd get really high. Too high.
Sometimes I'd take the same amount and not feel a thing. Didn't seem like the other drugs where the same amount would have the same effect every time. How come?
Because of the federal status of cannabis right now, those federal agencies that do all of that monitoring are not allowed to do it.
There's no FDA regulations because the federal government says it's illegal to sell or use the drug.
I don't buy things that haven't been tested. Just like I don't buy aspirin from somebody selling it on a street corner. I go to a pharmacy, right?
Well, I go to legal marijuana dispensaries, legal in California anyway, and decided to do the testing myself the government doesn't mandate, to find out exactly what is in the medicine I'm taking. We bought different kinds of items at random at 12 random places in San Francisco and Oakland. We bought $600 worth of flowers, edibles, and what they call shatter, kind of hash oil. Then we took it to the Steep Hill Labs in Oakland.
You know, the science is there. We've been doing this since 2008. We were the first. We've developed, very advanced methodologies.
And the results?
So all the edibles missed their mark.
Dr. Kimron DeCesar told me nothing I was taking had anything to do with what was on the label.
The one that was the worst claimed to be 100 milligrams. It was 1.3.
Oh, come on.
1.3. We checked it over and over again.
That would be this Edipure brand. It's 99% off.
No, it's 98.7% off. Well, just being accurate.
Most others were only half the strength they claimed, or a quarter.
And what about the individual ones in the same pack?
We analyzed those two, and we found that there's a great variation between individual samples, as much as 50%. So
from one piece to another.
One piece to another.
Even more disturbing, what they found in the buds that people smoke, mold and pesticide. 40% of the samples couldn't be sold in Colorado or Washington where there are limits.
Is that bad for me to smoke?
It could be, even if there are no mycotoxins in mold. There are certain deadly molds like penicillin or aspergillus. They could have deadly mycotoxins. They can kill people.
And 15% of the hash oil had benzene, which is not approved for use in the human body. Bottom line?
So when I take this stuff or smoke it, I don't know what I'm getting.
You don't know what you're getting.
I wish I did. It's my medicine. And if it really is medicine, shouldn't it be regulated? That's up to the politicians.
Did you ask the people who make the edibles about this?
Well, I did, and they said, you know what? We don't trust your testing because the labs aren't regulated either. And you know what? They're right. It's just part of the vagaries of the California marijuana laws.
Right. All right, Mike Sugarman, thank you.
All right.
When it comes to what's in it or whether you're even allowed to buy it, it could come down to the ballot box. That big debate when we come back. Everyone seems to agree California's medical marijuana law is broken. The question is how to fix it. Could legalizing it be the solution? Phil Matier has been following this long, complicated debate for years and joins us now with perspective from both sides. Phil?
That certainly seems to be the place that we're headed. California is one of 23 states, plus the District of Columbia, where cannabis is legal for medical use. And now 4 of those states, plus District of Columbia, have legalized it for recreational use as well. Could we be next? Joining us today to discuss that prospect is Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, a major proponent of legalization, and Susan Manheimer with the Police Chiefs Association, a group that opposes it. One of the big questions out there that's been raised by a number of people is, how is legalizing marijuana going to make California society better?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to look at the status quo and look at the failed drug war in this country. Look at the $1 trillion+ we've spent in the last 40 years trying to incarcerate our way out of drug use and drug abuse. It's failed. And I believe we have to objectively look at alternatives. And one of the alternatives is taxation, regulation for adults in a very thoughtful, judicious way.
If we embrace marijuana, right up there with wine, beer, we're going to be opening the door as well to advertising and encouraging its use. So again, how does that help society if we add yet another drug to the roster of things that people are already taking?
Well, you left out tobacco. We've seen a substantial decline in tobacco use in the last decade, almost a 50% decline, because we've been aggressive on educating. We've been aggressive on time, manner, and place restrictions on where you can smoke cigarettes. I think taking a similar approach, we're not condoning the use of the drug, quite the contrary, but we're not condemning people by incarcerating them for doing something as benign as some would argue as taking 2 shots of Jack Daniels at a bar. I've never understood the argument to the status quo that some people think that somehow if we make this drug legal, that somehow it will become available. Most of the kids I talk to say it's a hell of a lot easier to get marijuana than it is to find someone's fake ID to try to get a 6-pack of beer. So this idea that somehow we're going to create something that doesn't already exist, including the proliferation of illegal growing activity, because we're moving to regulate the market and make it more transparent and more open, I think is preposterous. And that's why I'm very, very desirous of having a very thoughtful debate and try to bring law enforcement into this debate, having been a perpetuator of that war on drugs as mayor, having gone after federal grants for buy bus, having perpetuated the costs for the court system, prosecution, defense, the jails, having sat there in the Tenderloin and watched myself these buy bus that were arresting poor people and disproportionately black and Hispanics. I can't continue that status quo, and I can't perpetuate that war.
Thank you. Joining us now is Susan Manheimer, who is the past president of the California Police Chiefs Association and the current chief of San Mateo. One of the arguments for legalization is that the war against it is failed. Your response to that?
I think it has in many ways, but we in California were on the front end of medical marijuana. I say that we get a handle on, and Cal Chiefs was an early embracer of it, and we are working now on legislation we're trying to find a sponsor for that will regulate and legalize it for personal use for the sick and the dying. The entire Prop 215 and what's happened in Colorado and the failed legalization attempts in Alaska and Amsterdam should inform us that if we can't even get medical marijuana right, we will not throw in the towel and simply say we can't enforce it.
One of the arguments is that right now it's easier for kids to get marijuana than it is to get an ID and a six-pack of beer, that it is already happening.
What I can tell you is in those cities and governments that did legalize recreational marijuana, juvenile use of marijuana went up and spiked and became twice the national average of other states that did not have legalized use. It does and has proven to impair development of the juvenile brain until the age of 25. Allowing it is not going to stem that tide, Phil. It's merely going to encourage it and spike it.
At this point, as we've clearly showed in our reports, the illegalization of marijuana has led to an underground economy. It's fostering other crimes as well. Wouldn't legalizing it take it out of the hands of the criminal dealers and the cartels?
And that's what's probably the worst part of this. Amsterdam, one of the early legalizers of recreational marijuana, found that prior to legalization, they had 3 international drug trafficking organizations. After legalization, over 50 internationally recognized drug trafficking organizations. You have such a black market and DTOs, drug trafficking organizations, set up throughout California. They are networked, and not just down in Mexico and Latin America, but up in Eastern Europe, in Bulgaria and other places. They are just waiting. They are licking their lips and really rubbing their hands together, waiting for legalization, because then with impunity, they will control that drug trade.
Thank you for joining us, Chief.
Thank you all. And thank you for watching California's Green Rush. We have a special section online with all this information and more about this ever-evolving issue. Check out kpix.com/marijuana. I'm Veronica Dela Cruz. Thanks for watching.